Hi, it's Ed Phillips with you today, and boy, do we have an interesting guest. This guy has a story. His name is Chris Martin, and now he owns and operates hempfulfarms.com, but that's just part of the story. We're going to bring in Chris now, and we're going to talk about the early part of the story, so stay with us. We'll do that in just a moment. Chris, nice beard. First of all, let's just get this out. You know, wonderful beard. How many years in the beard?
I'm about 4 years in right now.
How many?
About 4, 3.5.
4 though?
That's it.
Good job, man.
Yeah. Overachiever.
Yeah, you have Hempful Farms now, which has CBD products. So we'll come back to that because it's a really interesting story. But your story before that is, I guess, more like a saga. So take us back to when that all started. And spoiler alert, there's, I guess, some prison involved. Is that right?
There is, yeah. Well, let's start back in 2007. I guess that's when I first was diagnosed with Crohn's. And that's where I really first started experimenting with cannabis and trying to use it as a medicine. And once I saw how well it worked for me, I wanted to teach others. My wife and I became caregivers. We were allowed to grow 12 plants each. Once we harvested our first harvest, we had over 25 pounds. We were instructed by the state to destroy it and couldn't bring ourselves to do that with the time and the money and effort we had put into it. And we knew how many people we could help. So we rolled out a brand called Zonka, chocolate brand. I felt like chocolates were the easiest way to infuse the product and get them into people's hands. We did that for about 1.5 years, and the state felt that it was an illegal operation. So they raided us, charging me with 15 felonies. And I was looking at over 100 years in prison.
Holy cow. Man, oh man.
It was a little scary. It was a little scary. We got
that will get your attention right away, and so obviously it ended up you getting arrested and charged. And then what was the outcome there?
I fought for 3.5 years in court. We were not willing to just take any plea bargain, and actually we were trying to go to trial. Once I had hired a private investigator and dug up so much stuff on pretty much the county and the way the proceedings were handled, I was offered a 2-year plea bargain, almost an offer I couldn't refuse, just because going from over 100 years to 2, I felt like if I were to go to trial anyway and expose a lot of the information, that I wouldn't have gotten that good of a deal. I still would have got 30 years. So we felt it was better to write the book, make the document, get the information out there any other way that we can, and just take the plea bargain.
And so you served 2 full years, or did you get out on good behavior?
I did get an earned income credit of 78 days that they give everyone. I did get that, but I was also given a 4-year probation tail, which ends next month on the 21st.
And you were, I assume, since it was tried here in Arizona, or you took the plea agreement here in Arizona, probably served here in Arizona. Which one of the prisons did you end up at?
I went to a few of them. Typically, I was deemed a gang member because I rode in a motorcycle club, which is ridiculous. But
those of us that know, yeah.
It just allowed for them to put me in a different category when it came to the felonies. So that carried on into prison. So when I went to prison, I was also labeled as an SCG or a security threat group member. So I go to the higher yards. I was in Yuma first, down in Cibola, and I transferred from there after 1 year and went to Winslow. I was only in Winslow for a couple months because I think they realized I was on the wrong yard per my score. But I had also wrote a curriculum in prison to try to help with recidivism, and when I submitted it to the ADW, they transferred me to Kingman. So I really don't think they wanted any reform help at all. So I ended my sentence there.
Well, I don't know if you know part of my past, but I was in the state Senate for 4 years. I was not on the Judiciary Committee, but I'm very aware of the goings on within not just our state, but any state. And of course, then there's the federal thing going on. Well, we did want to get part of your backstory, because I'm guessing in prison you had a lot of time to think about your business that, of course, they probably made crash and burn while you were in prison. So
Well,
after you get out of prison, what did you do next?
well, with the 3.5 years of fighting during trial, that's where I really spent most of my time working.
Okay.
As most people know that have been to prison, there's not much you can do there but sit there.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of programs or classes, and it's actually illegal to run your business from prison. So if I were to receive my P&L or try to review that on the phone with my family, I would actually get a ticket or get put on report, which means I'm in trouble for running an illegal enterprise, even though I was just trying to help explain the P&L to my wife. So knowing that going in, I decided to separate a lot of my LLCs into separate entities. So that way, if I did get life in prison, my wife could do business and do that separately without being trapped under one umbrella with the businesses. So when I went to prison, it was even harder because my wife was deemed my co-defendant, so we couldn't have visits. We weren't allowed to speak. We could only write each other, and
Oh,
know
boy.
that when I'm on a security threat group, they're going to read every letter. So it was
Sure.
it was a task. I was actually given a ticket in prison for trying to explain the P&L to my wife over the phone. They tried to get me in trouble for running an illegal enterprise and take my good time, but it was proven that all I was doing was explaining to my wife to turn the lights off more so the APS bill was lower. I mean, it really wasn't that big of a deal. So when I came home, my wife had actually controlled the business while I was gone and did everything amazing. She kept us alive. She kept the product on the shelves in the stores. And I came home to pretty much a running business that just needed a little more hands-on business. So I went to work as soon as I got home, and now we have multiple retail stores, and we're online, and we make white label products for a lot of companies here in Arizona.
Well, I would be remiss, Chris, if I didn't ask you, because I originally came from the Midwest, where back then, you read about people using marijuana products. It was one of those things. So it take just a second to explain for us the difference between CBD and the traditional, what we think of as marijuana.
Well, to me, the only difference in hemp and cannabis is the government regulation of the 0.3% THC.
Right.
Otherwise, it's the exact same plant. It's only being divided and exploited for profit. They're the
Mhm.
same plant. They grow the same. They look the same. One has high THC, one has high CBD. So most people called cannabis the gateway drug for the last 50 years of prohibition. And I like to call hemp the gateway conversation. Because if I can get you talking about hemp and using hemp, then you're already using sativa and indica's second cousin. So what would be the difference if we moved on to talk about cannabis? And usually that's how the conversations go. Technically, the only thing separating them is the government.
And I'm not going to recommend any specific documentary, but there are some amazing documentaries that I've seen on like the History Channel about the history of how they went after cannabis. And some of the stuff is frightening with what our government did. And then, of course, once they've done it, then it's damned hard to undo it. There's no other way to put it. And that's kind of where we are there. But so it really is the THC content, and the rest of the plant has nearly none, right? I mean,
right. And there's over 100 cannabinoids that they found in the plant. We're talking CBD, CBG, CBA, THCV, THCA. I mean, we could go on and name them all. And just to have the ability to be able to study those things now and to talk about them is what we're going for. We need that in the medicinal world. The business of cancer needs to be recognized and treated with a real medicine. And that's what we're here to talk about and do with this plant every day.
And if you read about other non-traditional medicines, there are some things that, I mean, even where I grew up, I told you back in the Midwest, they had at the time sassafras tea. And now they have found that it may not be as safe as we thought it was. But I remember going out in the woods. My grandfather was able to say, that's a sassafras tree. We can dig that up. We can boil the root and we can make a nice tea out of it. And there are just so many things that are in the real life world that didn't come out of some plant somewhere, meaning a manufacturing plant, that can provide benefits to people. And so there's just so much out there that we've obviously chosen to not study. Well, tell us a little bit about some of your most popular products that you are offering right now. And remember, it's hempfulfarms.com. And that's a great place to go by. And by the way, there's a video on the homepage of the website that you really need to watch. Very, very interesting. Congratulations on that video too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Our latest products that we're working with right now are CBG. CBG is one of the cannabinoids that's best known for sleep and eating or appetite. We find a lot of people who are patients that come in and deal with those issues, especially after chemo or radiation or some of the illnesses that cause those things. CBG seems to be a huge reliever of those things. We just try to help formulate products that will help our patients and our customers that come in. We listen to them. They tell us their ailments, and we try to research and study. CBG, is one of those things that we are finding out now seems to be the new CBD. It seems to be just as helpful, if not more helpful, in some of those areas.
Wow. Well, if anybody ever had a story, Chris, it's you. And as I understand it, you've also written a book. Gee, what do you do in your spare time, dude? so
run a nonprofit.
Or a nonprofit. How could I have not known that? So tell us a little bit about your book and where we might be able to find it.
Okay. I wrote a book called One Life, the Chris Martin story. And technically, it was never meant to be a book. It was a memoir to my family because I sat in county jail and I thought I was going to prison for life. And the way the media spun the story of me being a gang member, a prior felon of pot that's gone to prison, and all this SEG stuff, it made me feel like my kids are going to look different to me, especially if I don't come home. If I get life for 30 years or better, they're going to probably believe all those things that are wrote about me. So,
and you told me you have quite a few kids.
Yes, I have five children. Yeah, and that was what the book was about. The book was to them, just explaining to them, I'm not a piece of crap. I didn't do, I'm from the Midwest too. So I ran away from the Midwest out here thinking I was getting away from that mentality and that thought process to come to a little bit more of a maybe liberal thought process, or maybe a little bit more open-minded, I guess I should say. But
open-minded, probably.
Yeah, totally wrong. Totally wrong. I came out here and 3 months later it went upside down. So that's really what the book is about, was to explain to my family. And when a friend of mine who later became my agent read the book, he said, "Man, this has got to become a movie. We've got to put this out there." And before I knew it, he published the book for me, helped me get it distributed, which is now on Amazon. And I think we had it on allauthor.com as well. And now he helped me launch the documentary, Haters Make Me Famous, which is now on Amazon Prime and Tubi TV live stream.
Is that the same name as the book, Haters Make Me Famous?
No, the book was called One Life. I wrote that first. The documentary came out and was really more about the story of the raid. So we called Haters Make Me Famous because it seemed like everyone in the government up there in the county did not like us. And they really had something against what we were doing, and they wanted to tell this bad story about us. So we felt like not only does it draw your attention, but it's going to explain a lot more backstory just in one title.
Well, it's nice that we're in a free enough country where you can, at this point at least, still get your story out there, and you can come out of prison and have a vibrant working business. What else would you like to tell us about your business before we wrap up?
Honestly, the main thing I want to talk about is the nonprofit, the Zonka Miles. I started a nonprofit in prison to help inmates that are doing time for cannabis. We've had it going for 2 years now, and I really felt like it has helped a lot of people, but in essence, it's kind of getting to people almost too late. So we've geared it almost a double-edged sword, or a double-headed monster, I guess you could say. We are gearing it now towards kids that age out of the juvenile system, because everyone I talked to in the prison circumstance, like I was in, 80% of them came from a bad background, a bad childhood, juvenile hall or foster care. So we are really targeting those children in those situations. As far as like Thanksgiving, we raised 260 pounds of turkey and delivered them to their homes. Over 600 gifts we gave out for Christmas, delivering to the group homes, by hand. Like, that's really what we want to do, on top of all the letter writing and the money putting on the books for the guys that are doing life for cannabis right now.
Well, Chris, you've got quite a story. We could probably go on for about a week, and we'll choose to not do that because you've got a business to run. We've got other things to get to. So thank you so much for being with us today, sharing your story, and what a story it is. And of course, we'll be back soon to have another one of those great stories about business and people in the same category that Chris is in about business success. Well, I produce